Okay, so I'm going to try to tap in to what I was thinking after I watched this, because I thought it was very interesting.
Just in terms of what we see in the map and the numbers, that what was he able to tap into in those alleged blue wall states to flip it? You have to say without a doubt, Bernie Sanders talked about starting a revolution. Donald Trump took that message and turned it into the greatest political disruption of our lifetime. And let's look at some of the statistics here. When you look, Rust Belt whites with no college degree. Again, the overall national numbers were down from 2012, but Donald Trump's numbers among these working class whites was a higher percentage than Mitt Romney. 62%, this should be in Wisconsin, not 63. But again, a 9-point advantage. A 7-point jump in Michigan, an 8-point jump in Pennsylvania, a 6-point jump in Ohio. He's a billionaire business from New York, but he had a connection with these workers. And again, he learned a very important lesson from Bernie Sanders talking about trade. I'll rip up the trade agreements. I will get you a job. The political establishment is out to get you. Donald Trump became the messenger. We have a very different map tonight, Anderson, and the disruption and the debate will only continue. What was Trump tapping?
Okay, so this isn't really what I'm going to talk about, but I got from here to where I'm about to go from here, and I'll do that again. So what I was thinking was, first of all, obviously Trump's a lying piece of shit, and he just saw how popular Bernie Sanders is, and anybody who's the first day of business school, they teach you, well, find somebody successful and copy them. Okay, so that's what Trump did, right? It doesn't take no fucking brain surgeon to figure that out, right? You certainly don't need to learn it in business school. But I guess they're obliged to say it so that the idiots in business school who don't don't think of that know it. So they're not total morons when they get out of business school. This is another reason why I tell you, man, education, it's only worth so much. It's really not that impressive. So here's what my response was okay, so the rich are constantly able to fool. Trump was able to fool working Americans. Obviously there's something wrong with your average American. Okay. Now, yesterday I was convicted of terroristic threatening, sentenced to 9 months or 3 months in jail. It could have been a year, but they sentenced me to 3 months in jail here in Lexington, Kentucky. And psychiatric treatment. Now, I don't know if they can force me, because I'm obviously not insane, right? Just real quick, since I mentioned this, the reason that they convicted me is because kill the messenger. I told them that they're pissing people off, that the people at the people who are having me convicted, they're the ones pissing people off. And I said that, if you piss enough people off, sooner or later one of them's going to come in there and kill somebody or blow somebody up. And I stick by that. Am I wrong? If you piss enough people off, will one of them not do something, retaliate in a possibly very severe way? Of course I'm right. And there's no... Okay, so how did they get 6 people, because they didn't have 12, to convict me of terroristic threatening because I said that? Oh, and then the guy goes on to say, because I was talking about how there's a war coming, and if you keep on pissing all the people off, the whole country, sooner or later you're going to cause a civil war. And so because I said that, he said that's where I went too far, talking about that. Well, and then he said, well, I stick by everything I say. Yeah, I stick by everything I say. I stick by everything I say. I say they're starting a civil war. Absolutely, I say they're starting a civil war. And I don't mind this being in the beginning of the segment, because I'm going to do a whole segment on it here very soon. And I'll have all the what happened in court. I'll have the whole thing. And I'll have what I should have done in court, because you would be real surprised. They have it all set up, they have it rigged. They have it totally rigged. Okay, so and I'm not going to get into that yet. I'm talking about this right now. So as far as this goes, I was like, well, so, you know, he managed to cheat and steal the election in the primaries. You know, really, who cares, right? Who cares which one of their assholes is president? Who cares which one of the assholes lies again and talks dumbasses out there into voting for him, right? Because, I mean, who really cares? All I care about, as far as that's concerned, is that those dumbasses learn a lesson. Will they finally learn a lesson? Probably not. Because to them, the possibility that somebody will get in and be president and help them make more money is more important than helping the whole country, everybody, make more money. And they're too obtuse, that means narrow-minded, to figure out that, well, if we could get somebody in who would make everybody, every American citizen, a priority, that would include them. They're just too stupid. They've lived in a country that's been so racist and so classist all of their lives that all they can hope for is to do like the rich do and use the political system, buy off the political system to help themselves. None of them are interested in a country. They're not interested in having a country. They're not interested in one for all and all for one. You know, the idea that we're all brought up with, that we're all living in a country where we all care about each other. They're not interested in that. And then they wonder why I say there's a civil war coming. Oh yeah, there's a war coming. You know, if people don't straighten up and smarten up and put an end to this greedy, self-centered hunger, you know, somebody, and you can't quench that thirst. You can't feed that hunger and satisfy that hunger. That's a hunger that is so evil and so bad. There's no way you're ever going to sate it. What you have to do is remove it. You have to remove it from power. There's no room for I. You know, it's not about me. I'm not just sitting up here bitching about me. And so I say the answer is to refuse to work for them. You know, so I say the answer is to refuse to work for them. Americans need to make it clear they will not work for the oligarchy anymore. They are more than willing to work for the people, for their country. And this is true. Anybody that you ask, if they were asked to work for their country, like so they go and work for Singer sewing machines, or they go and work for Ford or whatever. But those companies are regulated so that they can't yeah, I mean, we have to get rid of the profiteers and the capitalists. People need to just say no. They just need to say, I'm not working. They need to face their fears. They need to say, no, we demand a better system before we'll work for it. One that helps everybody who's participating, and that means somebody who doesn't even have a job, because at some point we might say, you know, there isn't anything for you to do. That doesn't mean we're not going to feed you and put a roof over your head. So, you know, we need to quit working for the oligarchy. You know, I quit when I worked for my dad. I figured if I'm going to have to work for an oligarchist, well, at least I'll work for my dad. And as a result, when my mom dies, I'll have a huge inheritance, and you know, fuck all these rich people when I get it, because I'm going to use it to fight them, every bit of it, every penny, and let them try and take it away from me. Well, they'll find out. They'll find out. They're robbers and thieves. They are. They're a bunch of scumbags. The crooks have control of the country. The guy who got me convicted yesterday and is having me thrown in jail, where I'll be at the mercy of his thugs, right? And if I die, by the way, it won't be suicide. No. I would never commit suicide. I'm not suicidal. I've never... As a matter of fact, I think I've expressed the fact that I think suicide's chicken. I would rather suffer than commit suicide, because I think that, just like going to jail, man, it's a badge of honor for me. You know, these fuckheads, they want to throw me in jail just because I complained about them. That's a badge of honor for me. It certainly is. And any suffering that I do, you know, I hate to say it, but it's like Jesus, you know, he suffered for us. You know, I don't know about any of the other bullshit about him raising somebody from the dead and all this crap. You know, maybe he's just gave somebody CPR and everybody was so amazed, you know, oh, the guy's still alive. Who knows what the stories are, right, from 2,000 years ago. But what I do know about Jesus is that he did die on the cross. And not for our sins. He died because there's a bunch of thugs and assholes who put him up there. That's pretty straightforward. And I say we stop working for them, man. Because those people who are cops and everything, they're the same thing. They're the thugs and they're the criminals. Like I was saying about this guy who's had me thrown in jail now. He murdered a guy. He walked right up to a guy, shot him 8 times. The guy was just sitting on a bench. Now, he, as far as I'm concerned, I'm pretty sure that he planted the gun on him. Now, the guy did have a gun, but he was a licensed security guard, and he was on a case, and his employer had just given him that, told him that he needs to carry that gun, and given it to him. Now, whatever happened between this asshole, Chris White, he's in charge of security at the Department of Community-Based Services for Kentucky, and he's an asshole, and they've just given him the job because they just give each other jobs. They just help each other out. That's why it's not fair anyway, right? Because there's a small group and they all make sure they all have jobs, right? And they're shitty. They're shitheads. They're thugs. They're just out to hurt people like you and me. So all we really know, really, about that day is that he was in plain clothes and he confronted James Russell. Chris White confronted James Russell on that bench and shot him 8 times. I think he missed twice, so he's really not even good at being a killer, right? A thug. It's crazy. And of course, all we have to go on is he says that James Russell pulled the gun on him. Well, let me ask you something. And this is his words. He said that, I can't tell you exactly, but I remember, I've got the report, and I'm going to publish the report too. The police report is all just a big whitewash. The whole thing, it's, you know, they're supposed to be investigating Chris White possibly murdering somebody, but you know what the whole report is about? So the whole report is about how bad James Russell is. And I don't know if he was a good guy or a bad guy, but I do know this. It's the only thing he was ever convicted of. Well, get this. The same thing that they're convicting me of falsely. Terroristic threatening. And what was the evidence for terroristic threatening against James Russell? Somebody saw his wife laying down on the ground or whatever, and him standing over her. Now, she wasn't hurt, she wasn't hit. Obviously they got into a shoving match, and I know why, because he wanted his ring back. She was cheating on him, is my guess. She was working at the police department. This is crazy stuff, man. She's working at the police department in data entry. I hope I don't have my timeline off. At some point she's definitely working, because it says that she was working in data entry in the police department. So she's probably, why are they getting divorced? She's you know, months pregnant with his first child, a boy. So why are they getting divorced? Well, obviously, I mean, she's probably cheating on him, right? Or he's cheating on her, whatever. Well, we don't know. But we do know this. He wanted his ring back. It probably belonged to his mother or something. And he demanded his ring back if she was going to divorce him. However, they got into a shoving match, and he's a lot bigger than her, obviously, and she ends up on the ground, right? Okay. The only proof, or the only evidence of terrorist threatening, obviously, is her word. Well, we all know in a court of law, her word against mine doesn't count. But they don't care about that. And juries don't care about that. Juries are allowed to find people guilty with no evidence. And as you'll see in my case, there's no evidence against me. Yeah, what I said, is it very threatening? Yeah, of course it is. I mean, who wouldn't be scared by the fact that what they're doing is pissing a lot of people off, and that might get them killed? They should be afraid. And they should be afraid of me too. They should be, you know why people are afraid of other people? It's because they've hurt them. It's because they've done something wrong and therefore should be illegal. What the Department of whatever DCBS has done to me is very illegal. I mean, they're not allowed to string me along and play games with me. I'm obviously qualified for food stamps. I have no income, except for I got some income, and then they made a big fuss about it. They made a big trouble about it. I got $245 a month all of a sudden. I go to them and tell them, and I explain to them that I'm making this money now, and they make that a reason not to give me any food stamps. It's bullshit, man. You know, by law, they have to give me $165 worth of food stamps, just even if I'm getting $245 a month. But instead, they screw it around and try and say, well, I don't get any food stamps. So that's screwed up. And I can't tell you how screwed up the way they did it was. I'm not going to get into that right now. But that's not the only thing. They came out and publicly berated me because they didn't like the way I was standing in line. I was at the front of the line, standing with everybody else. So there were people right behind me. I couldn't back up. I was just standing at the front door. Guy comes out and says, this guy's found... Oh, everybody stop. Nobody come in yet. He says, I want to congratulate this man at the front door. He's found a new way to stand in line. And everybody knew he was just being an asshole to me. You know? who gives a fuck how I stand in line at the front door? My back was hurting, so I was leaning up against the door handles because it kind of made it so I could tilt backwards, and I put my hands behind my back. And, having to stand there for half an hour or whatever was a little hard on my back. Some girl came up and wanted in, and she walked right up to my face, and I didn't know what she wanted. I thought she was just somebody else coming to go to the place, and she goes, I need to get to the door, and I go, okay. So I backed off. There's two doors. Obviously she wanted me to back up so far that I wasn't in front of either of the doors, but the fact is the right door was wide open for her. And then she looked at me like she wanted me to back up some more. Well, there were all kinds of people behind me. I couldn't back up any farther. And I just motioned towards the door. It's right there, So she knocked on the door, and this same black guy who berated me came and unlocked the door and let her in. It was no problem. But, there's all kinds of people there. And, what I said just now about if you piss off enough people? Well, that goes for crowd behavior in general. If there's a bunch of people, you'll get 5 out of 100 people that... So you got people in that line watching all this going down, think I'm an asshole. How am I an asshole? I tried to back up as much. What do you want me to do? Make the whole line? It's like 50 people behind me. Make them all back up so that both sides, even though nobody uses the left side, the left door, the right door opens, the left door stays locked. Even after they unlock it, it's just one door that they leave unlocked, because that's plenty anyway. And plus the left side doesn't even open up into anywhere. It just opens up into a piece of glass. So anyway, I know it's stupid, right? I mean, it's all stupid. And so, I have plenty of reasons, but that's not really what I was talking about. I was talking about them pissing off everybody, because I'll tell you what, when you get down there and you're waiting all day, you get to talk to a lot of people. And there's a lot of people who are treated a lot worse than me, and a lot angrier than I am. A person can be angry, and that doesn't make them violent, but yeah, I guess some of them are going to be violent, right? Sooner or later. They had enough, had enough, fed up. And I tell you, man, everybody says America's great again. Oh yeah, in 2 years Trump made America great again. In 2 years Trump solved everybody's financial problems. And give me a break. I can go anywhere here in town, not in the places where people, well, even in places where people own houses, but you'd have to dig them out. You'd have to find them. But you could go down to any of the other parts of town. So, yeah, it's hard for me not to talk about my case, because, they're putting me in jail. So obviously, I'm going to relate everything that's going on to me. You're gonna hear a lot of that, and I'm sorry about that if I go on about my case for what you think of as too long. But it is a sad thing what they're trying to do. And when I first got into this food stamps kind of, I didn't really want to get food stamps, but everybody else is going through. And in that respect, you know, it reconnected me with the people through personal experience. I mean, I know I'm not the only one. You don't have to be super smart to know that, you know, what happens to you. If you're part of a system of millions of people, I think 40 million people who get food stamps, Obamacare and stuff, then if it happens to you, you're probably not even a minority. You're probably a majority. You're probably going to find out that at least 50% of the people are experiencing these problems. And as far as the DCBS goes here in Lexington, yesterday I found out why this department was created for this guy who's attacking me. And it's because so many people are angry when they're with their treatment by DCBS that they need a guy to protect the. I mean, he said that the department he's got was created after a guy supposedly robbed him. I don't know, but he beat one of the guys to death. One of the guys who was interviewing. I can tell you, man, the last guy who interviewed me, he made me want to beat him to death. He made me want to. He made me feel like that. I mean, I have a recording of the interview. I didn't even get angry, but he wouldn't accept anything. He wanted proof of the $245 a month that I get. And I had already given them, I mean, I get it in cash. What do they want? Do they want recordings of, and then, so I gave them that. So I made up receipts, made out to the guy who gives me the $245 every month. And I gave it to them. No, that's not good enough. Well, so the guy started sending me MoneyGrams. So I gave them receipts of the MoneyGrams. Well, that's not enough. And I didn't want them to have the contract that I have between me and the guy, because it's a sales contract, and it's none of their fucking business, man. If you want to know, I don't care. The only house that I've ever had paid for, I got it from my grandparents, and I could have tried to live there, but it would have been hard for me to live there on no money. So I had to sell it. I had to sell my only house and become homeless. Okay? So I sold it to this guy. He pays me $245 a month for 13 years, and I figured, well, that'll get me through to retirement when I get $600 or $700 a month Social Security, right? And I needed retirement since 55. I worked my ass off for. I mean, the way I look at it is I've worked my ass off since I was 5 years old. Okay, kindergarten is the first day of your work, your job. It's the first day. And you go through high school, and then you go through college. And by the way, I worked since I was 16. My first job was cleaning labware at Stanford Research Institute in Palo Alto. Just for the summer while the guys who usually did it were gone. And then after that I got a job at Johnny's Smoke Shop, and all through college I had jobs. I mean, I can remember them. Had lots of jobs. Shitty jobs too. Some of them I had to quit because you didn't even get paid. I mean, there were plenty of jobs where they had you running around advertising their product by trying to sell it all over the place, but you only got paid commission. Nah. And yeah, could maybe somebody manage to sell your product even though it was a bullshit product? Maybe. crazy, the whole way the capitalist system works. And I know all about it because I've been in it at every level. I've run a business. I run Global Colors for a year until I realized that the owner was trying to force me to run it his way, and the way he was running it. You know how he made his, if an employee didn't do what he wanted him to do, and a lot of times he was asking employees to do things he shouldn't have been asking them to do. I was an employee, his employee for 12 of the 13 years. Well, even as the manager, managing the country, I was still his employee. This is my dad I'm talking about. So, you know how he handled people? He insulted them. He intimidated them and pushed them around and insulted them until they got mad. And he felt like, well, if he could make them mad, maybe that and threatening to fire them, or at least that's always a threat, right? Whenever your boss is trying to tell you he's not happy with your work. So he figured that, my dad figured he could motivate people to do their jobs or to do stuff that that weren't really their jobs, like having to put up with people threatening us. And, I mean, I had all kinds of people threaten me when I worked for Global Colors for my dad. They'd get mad at the company. They'd get mad because my mom and dad didn't pay enough attention to them or couldn't. And they'd come to us, the employees, and they'd just raise hell with us. It wasn't our fault, you know. I would tell them, look, man, you're talking to the wrong person. He said, well, you're right here. You know, yeah, that's true, but man, it's not my company. So, how did we get off onto this subject? Well, you know, this is all about some people being bad, some people haven't taken control of our country, not given. You know, I mean, if they talked enough Americans into voting for them, you know, what the fuck were you doing voting for Trump, you idiots? And what the fuck were you doing voting for Hillary Clinton? Right now, we wouldn't have Trump if I mean, can you imagine if Bernie had been the guy against Trump, and what this guy had just said?
Just in terms of what we see in the map and the numbers, that what was he able to tap into in those alleged blue wall states to flip? You have to say without a doubt, you know, Bernie Sanders talked about starting a revolution. Donald Trump took that message and turned.
Okay, so we talk a lot about how many Republicans or how many establishment Democrats have lost, like a bunch of them lost during this recent primary, because they were, here, I'll show you. Let me see if I can find, I think it's going to be the first one, actually. So just bear with me. Pretty sure it's going to be right here. Yeah, this is it. So what I'm going to show you here is about how establishment Democrats, the traitors of our country, of our Democratic Party, have lost over 1,000 seats in government over the last, I don't know how many years. They basically lost the whole country. I mean, real Democrats, Democrats who are for the people, they had 1,000 more seats. They've lost them all, and this is how, and this is why. And my point is that Trump would have fallen into the same pit. So if he was acting like he was Bernie Sanders, and then say he had won, like he did, but say they had run Bernie, because they pick the Democratic Party's cheat. They pick who will be, at least in our case, in 2016, they picked Hillary Clinton. She wasn't elected. There were millions of people who weren't allowed to vote for Bernie because they didn't have time to register as Democrats. And because they cheated, if you want to know how they cheated, you just have to go back and study the whole thing, because it's too hard to explain. But if you can't take my word for it, then you're a fuckhead, you know. Because I'm an honest person, and you should take my word for it. They cheated him. So let's say they hadn't cheated him. Well, then Donald Trump would have been coming out of his primary with Bernie's message, and Bernie would have been running with Bernie's message. And just like when you say, oh, well, if you tell Republicans to vote for the Republican, or who's an asshole, or to vote for a Democrat who's an asshole. So one's, and I'll let you watch this for a little while, one's just as much of an asshole as the other. So so you have Trump running as not an asshole, right? You have Bernie, who's always been not an asshole. And you know Trump might be lying, but you don't know that Bernie's lying. As a matter of fact, pretty good chance he's not lying about wanting to tear up the TPP. And by the way, Trump has gone back on everything he said about, you know, healthcare. And I mean, he's a fucking scumbag, man. So if the people had been given a choice between a real good guy that has a track record as a good guy and a bad guy who's claiming to be, so just like if voters are given a choice between voting between a Republican, who we know are assholes, and a Democrat who's pretending to be an asshole. See where I'm getting? See what I'm getting at? So Trump would have lost. Because if it came down to voting for two people who are claiming to do the same thing, you're going to vote for the person who's most likely to do those things, not the one who most likely lied to get you to vote for him. So let's watch this, and I'll turn off the music. This is kind of cool, though. I got a lot of video off of YouTube of meteorites, falling stars. But let's listen to this without.
Oh, hey, Ron.
Hello.
Ron will be in Austin this weekend.
November 10th. Tickets still available. rompthecone.com.
Check it out. So we're going to look at Joe Donnelly, who lost. So there were lots of confusing messages from the midterm elections. Some progressives lost, like Andrew Gillum and Beto O'Rourke. But some progressives won, like Sherrod Brown, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then, also in Wisconsin, they got a new pro-labor governor.
Yep.
Same thing, Michigan governor won, also Democrat. But in Indiana, I'm going to show you Joe Donnelly. So, Joe Donnelly, just watch this commercial and you tell me if you want to vote for this guy. If you're going to vote, let's say you're an independent, who would you vote for?
Socialists want to turn health care over to the government.
Over my dead body.
Some in
Now just imagine, 8 or 9 out of 10 Democrats are for Medicare for all. The majority of Republicans are for Medicare for all. And what does this guy say, running as a lefty?
Socialists want to turn health care over to the government.
Over my dead body.
You're now appealing to the minority of the electorate. So you're cutting the legs off from underneath your own base, and you're not interesting people on the right. The people on the right are for Medicare for all.
Some in Congress want to let insurance companies deny coverage for pre-existing conditions.
Not on my watch.
The radical left wants to eliminate ICE.
I support ICE, funding President Trump's border wall.
Extremes on the left and right want to cut defense spending.
I don't want our troops in a fair fight. I want them to have the best.
So let's just recap. He's against Medicare for all. He's pro-military spending. Pro-military spending. We're spending $700 billion a year. $200 billion more right now on our military than we were spending at the height of the Iraq War. We had a 40% increase in our military budget since the height of the Iraq War. A 40% increase. Do we have a 40% increase in our education budget? 40% increase in our library budget? 40% increase in any other budget?
Over my dead body.
So he's against Medicare for all. He's for Trump's border wall. He just said he's going to fund it.
Mm-hmm.
He's for the border wall. He's for the more military spending, and he's against Medicare for all. Boy, what a great Democrat. What's the point of voting for this guy?
President Reagan said, peace through strength. I'm Joe Donnelly. I approve this message.
And then what does he do? He quotes Ronald Reagan. Dude, just run as a Republican. Well, you lost. So when given the choice between a Republican and a Republican, they pick the Republican every time.
Okay. You see what I'm talking about? If Bernie had won after stealing, or if Bernie had won the primary and run against Trump, who won by stealing Bernie's message, then he would have been faced with that problem. He would have been faced with voters saying, well, wait a minute, if I like Trump, what am I, just a diehard Republican? I like his message because he's a Republican, and yet I've got another guy who's not a rich piece of shit who's running that I can vote for. Yeah, I mean, first of all, Bernie could have won easily without their votes, but he would have won too. He would have won them over too. Matter of fact, Bernie wins everybody over. You know why? Because we've been right all along. We've been right all along about everything. Everything. You know? Whether it's treating people who are coming to our country begging for help, and I'm not saying we can afford to let them all in, but at least we could be honest with them. You know, we'd like to help you, but man, you know, it's like somebody comes to my house and asks me to give them some money or some food. I just have to tell them the truth. But at least we'd be dealing with them, you know, on a legitimate level. But for everything from immigration to war, so everything, that's pretty much the two ends of the spectrum anyway. Immigration and war, poverty and war, you know, everything else kind of falls in between. So everything, we're right about everything. You know, it wasn't always we as in me and them. It was a long time I had to look at both sides, and I was like amazed at the Republican arguments, and then I was amazed at the Clintons and the Obamas. I was like, man, you guys, you're fucked up. You know, you're fucked up. You need to, well, it's too late now. I mean, we've had to split with them, and they all hate me because I tell the truth about them. You know? No, I don't tell every conspiracy theory, you know, I don't know, you know, I don't think Vince Foster, I don't know that he was murdered. I do find it awfully weird that all these people die around the Clintons and the Bushes. I mean, they seem to have that in common. A lot of death. And I'm not talking about people who, you know, somebody died in, well, there are a lot of people who die in single car accidents related to the Clintons and the Bushes. Like the Bush's babysitter, I think before Bush was, obviously before he was president, is found pinned to a wall by one of Bush's cars that somehow got loose, and I don't know, you'll have to look into it. And then of course Laura Bush hit somebody with a car, I think. I don't know if that was the Bushes for sure. You know, but for years I read a whole bunch of stuff and all of it was true. So like if somebody got pinned by a car and found dead, pinned to the wall by a car, and for whatever happened, I never speculated on what happened, but obviously it's suspect, right? I mean, what did she know? I was listening just the other day, ran across some video and people were going, hey, I love the Clintons. Yeah, I never heard anything bad about them. And, you know, if I am found dead somewhere, it wasn't suicide. Shit like that. They were joking around, but they were serious. Sure, they're serious. A lot of comedy is dead serious. So...